in our gospel this evening, we have two essentially different postures of prayer. In one, we have a tax collector who his entire posture is comparing himself to others. Right? He says, "Oh God, I thank you that I am not like the rest of humanity, these other people, right? They watch the wrong news channel, and they don't use their blinker in traffic. And they go to the grocery store, and they touch all the apples, not like literally all the apples, right? But right? I thank you because I tip every valet that helps me. And even when telemarketers call, I at least say, have a nice day before hanging up." Like, that's really how silly what he's saying is. Like, it's just innocuous things. And the Greek here is actually really brutal in how it describes his prayer, because it says that the Pharisee took up his position and prays to himself. Our translation is actually very generous to him. It says he enters the temple, takes up his spot, and he doesn't pray to God, he prays to himself, right? "Oh God, I thank you, I am so wonderful." And he compares himself to everybody else. He compares himself not to our Lord. He doesn't really even think about himself much at all. He says, at the very least, I'm better than those people. Our second prayer takes a totally different posture. He doesn't compare himself to others. He compares himself to our Lord. He does not compare himself to others at all. He doesn't mention other people, whether they're better than him, worse than him. They're not important to him. And he doesn't use the word I. The first Pharisee praying uses the word I tremendously. He says, "I thank you that I am not like the rest of humanity. I fast twice a week. I pay tithes. I, praying to myself." Right? But the second person doesn't use the word I at all. He says, "Oh God, be merciful to me, a sinner." His whole prayer is based upon his relation to God, not to others, to God. He says, "Lord, I recognize my sinfulness. I recognize that I have nothing when I stand before you that can in any way win over your love or your grace, but be merciful to me, for I am a sinner." And the parable goes on to say, right, that one goes home justified and one does not. And what's great about this parable is that it has an introduction, because the introduction to the parables are really, really helpful sometimes to understand what's really going on or what the point is. Because the introduction to our parable says that Jesus is telling this story to those who were convinced of their own righteousness and despised everyone else. They hate everyone else, right? I'm wonderful. So one way to read this parable is essentially a parable about how to love others, which is curious, right? Because the way to love others, Christ seems to be saying, is to recognize my own sinfulness. And the way to love others is to simply relate myself entirely to our Lord, not to compare myself to others. Our second tax collector neither says whether he's better than others nor worse. It's not important to him, right? He just says, "Oh God, be merciful to me, a sinner." It's in recognizing my need before our Lord, my brokenness, my need for forgiveness, that I am able to love others in the first place. It's recognizing that I am, in fact, no better off or worse than others, right? That my anxieties, my fears, my brokenness is actually in many ways very similar to the person to my right and to my left, that I'm no better than others, that I can't stand before the Lord and pray to myself and say how wonderful I am, because I'm really not, right? I'm just the same as everyone else, and my greatness and my wonderfulness can come from simply coming before our Lord and in total honesty saying, "Lord, have mercy upon me, for I am a sinner." And that therefore, my misery and my brokenness is everyone else's. And I recognize that in spite of my brokenness, our Lord still loves me. That in spite of the fact that I have nothing to offer to him, nothing with which to win his love, he has mercy upon me and he loves me. And it's out of knowing that relationship to him that I'm free to love others in the same way. Because after all, despite the fact that the first man, our Pharisee, talks about others relentlessly in his prayer, he forgets many other important people because he thinks of himself as an individual, right? I alone am great among all these people. I alone, I fast twice a week. But he forgets all the wonderful and important people who got him to that spot. That as a child, he didn't learn how to read Hebrew by himself. Someone taught him, right? He didn't learn the law by himself. Someone taught him. He didn't gain virtue or discipline simply out of nowhere. His parents or his family or friends or his teachers enabled him, That the fact that the Pharisee could stand before our Lord and even have the audacity to claim all the good qualities that he has is because of all the wonderful other people in his life who have helped him get to that spot. The Pharisee, actually, for all of his comparing to others, forgets many other important people, many other important good people. The first man, our Pharisee, forgets the words that John Donne says in his poetry, right? No man is an island, that none of us are on our own. None of us can stand up and say, Lord, I thank you that I'm not like these other people. There are no these other people, right? We're all deeply interconnected with each other. And who I am, standing before you as Father Glenn, this priest, right? I am a product of my parents and my family and my friends and my teachers and my coaches and my piano teacher and, right? I mean, the Uber driver last night, right? Like everybody, right, in my life has had an influence on making me who I am. I cannot stand before our Lord alone. I cannot say, Lord, I'm not like these other people, because in reality, I really am. In the deepest truths of things, right, we're each like a molecule of water in the sea, right? We don't really stand on our own, but if one of us moves, we all move together because we're all connected. I rely upon the people beside me, above me, below me. That there's a greatness, right? There's a tremendous amount of humans, and we're all actually pretty wonderful people. And we're all together in this sea, and we move together. That my goodness influences others, that my evilness influences others. That the tax collector, by pointing at others and saying, they're greedy, they're dishonest, they're adulterous, he has a certain responsibility for that. Because had he loved them better, they wouldn't have to be that way, right? That in a certain way, as Dostoevsky talks about in his books, right, I am responsible for the sins of others because we're all connected. And my virtue and my love and my generosity, like the sea, right, can support others around me. We are all together, and therefore I can love others when I recognize my weakness before our Lord, and when I recognize the weakness of others before our Lord. And I recognize that our Lord has loved me, particularly through the others in my life, and that I can be that for others as well, right? That I can be the parent, I mean, not me, but you can be the parent, the friends, the siblings, the piano teacher, the Uber driver, right? Who truly uplifts others. And I can do that because at the very root of my prayer, I don't pray to myself, but I pray to him, to our Lord. I say, Lord, have mercy upon me, for I am a sinner. And experiencing his mercy in my brokenness, experiencing his love in all of my lack, frees me to truly love others.